Hi, this is Evan Montes of Colthrone, and this week I saw Batman vs. Superman, and I am convinced that Superman is Christian, or at least his creators are. Let's start from the beginning. Superman was created in the decade of the 30s by two Jews, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, during the Great Depression. They, for being Jews, were discriminated against, and to get a job, they created the character of Superman, to which they sold to DC Comics. Here's what's interesting. In an interview with the BBC of London in 1981, Jerry Siegel said that one night he would wake up constantly with ideas and ideas of this Superman character, and he wrote them down and took them to his friend Joe, and they started to develop this character. In other words, Superman was inspired. So, either these two Jews were closet Christians, or God has a sense of humor, because Superman turned out to have characteristics that were very similar to Jesus Christ, beginning with the fact that Superman is not from this planet, but rather he was sent to this planet by his father, whose name was Jor-El, while Superman's real name is Kal-El, and these are from a noble family that is called the House of El. Now, as many of you may know, El in Hebrew means God, reason for which El is included in many biblical names such as Israel, Abel, Daniel, Gabriel, Samuel, Elizabeth, etc., etc. It's all related with God. So this Jor-El, the father, El, the father, sends his son El, his only begotten son, to the earth to save the world, but not without first having chosen a family on earth, a humble family, to who he would send his son to. Here's what's funny. The Jews are very proud of their own, of the big achievements and successes they have had, and Superman definitely is one of those big achievements they've had. This is the most famous and successful superhero that has existed in the world of comics. And if there's something that Jews hate, is that us Christians come and we Christianize their Jewish things. But sometimes it's so easy. Like, for example, the ritual they invented for their Passover Seder, where they take one bread, they call it the bread of affliction, they break it in two, they wrap it in a white sheet, and they go and hide it somewhere in the house. They invented this for the Passover Seder, but there is no explanation as to why they do it. So we Christians, we see this, and for crying out loud, we see Jesus in all of this. We see Jesus' body being broken, being wrapped up in a burial sheet, and then being buried and coming back. It's so Christian, this whole Jewish ritual, which is so ironic considering that the last thing Jews want is to have any kind of ties to this Jesus character. But then they make up this ritual for the Passover, and it's so easy to give it a Christian identity. That's why I say God has a sense of humor. Now, with this Jesus character of Superman, the same thing happens. The Jews, they try so hard to fit this character into the persona of Moses, who went from one civilization of the Hebrews to another of the Egyptians and was adopted by them, and then he came back to his people and liberated them, and all these things that really don't fit with Superman. And here is where I come to the topic of what I want to talk about, in that the books are always better than the movie version. In every case, the book version is always more detailed. It's gonna have more information, more revelation, and the Bible definitely is not the exception. In this moment, we are celebrating what the Catholic Church calls Holy Week or Easter Week, and in this week we are in vacations in some countries, and they show many biblical movies on TV, and these movies are very fun to watch, very entertaining, and you can actually learn things from the Bible from these movies. But I repeat, the book version is always better than the movie version in every case. Movies will always omit or modify or change things that were in the book. As for the Bible, let's look at two famous cases. We all know the story of Moses going to Pharaoh to demand the liberation of the Hebrews, throws his staff down and turns into a snake. Pharaoh's magicians do the same, and that's what we see in the movies. But what if What if Moses threw down his staff and it didn't turn into a snake, but it turned into a crocodile? Let me share some details about this so you can analyze it. When God told Moses to go to Egypt to liberate his people, Moses answered him that nobody would believe him that he had talked with God. So God said, take your staff, throw it on the floor, and what happened? It turned into a snake. And in Hebrew, the word for snake here is nakash, which means serpent. But when he went to Egypt and Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh, this turned into a tanin, which means a monster of land or sea. It could be a serpent, but it could also be something else. Still, it's interesting why this word changed in the Hebrew. Another more obvious example is Moses. In all the movies with Moses, it's always him as a baby being placed in a basket, floated down a river, and where he crashes into an Egyptian princess, and she adopts him, takes him to the palace, and he grows up as a prince of Egypt. But in reality, what happened in the Bible is less dramatic. The mom of Moses put him in a basket, but in reeds at the bank of the river, she put him there where he could not move, and that's where he stayed stationary in the river. And then the Egyptian princess came with her servants. They started bathing, they heard the baby, and the sister of Moses went to the princess and asked her if she wanted one of the Hebrews to raise the child for her. The princess said yes. So the sister went to the mother, and the mother of Moses ended up raising her own child, and when he was a little bit bigger, he was given to the princess in her palace or whatever. So Moses didn't come from a faraway land or from a faraway civilization or different or foreign. He was actually born in Egypt. He was born within an ethnic group that was immersed in the Egyptian culture. That's why the Hebrews were so idolatrous. And he wasn't an only son. He didn't have superpowers. Moses is a pretty bad candidate to be the model of Superman. While Jesus, on the other hand, he has a lot of similarities. He's extraterrestrial, his father is from the noble classes, he was given to a humble family on earth. He has two natures. One is that he is part of the common people, another is that he is a very powerful hero savior. And in the last two Superman movies, these have been saturated with symbolism and juxtapositions of Superman with Jesus Christ. But this one especially, this last movie, caught my attention because Superman is constantly being referred to as a god. This caught my attention because in this very moment, in the United States of America, there is a war against God. There has been a lot of efforts to erase the name of God and Jesus Christ from absolutely every government, state, and public institution. Every time there is a mention of God or Jesus Christ, there is some group that is agnostic or atheist or Satanist or progressive or secular that start crying out and claiming that their rights are being violated, that they are being discriminated against, that the Constitution is being violated, that it is against the law, and they demand and they legally threaten to have everything that is related to God or referring to God or Jesus Christ to be removed from every place that is educative, governmental, state, or public, with the argument that all of that is a violation to the separation of church and state. And they are having a lot of success. Lex Luthor in this movie is not so much a comic villain, but rather he is the incarnation of liberalism in America. He is infiltrated in government, he is doing lobbying to destroy God in society, that people should not have any gods reigning over them. And Superman here is accused as being the bad guy, the villain, the one who's bringing violence and destruction to the people, and that society would be a lot better without him. It's exactly the same argument that the liberals have in this moment in the US. That religion, that God, he is a genocide, he's a homophobic, he's a tyrant, he's intolerant, he incites to violence. Well, practically this society in this movie calls good evil and evil good, and there's only a few who still believe in Superman. Coincidence? Nothing is coincidence. It's not a coincidence that Superman has similarities to Jesus Christ. It's not a coincidence that in this movie he is always referred to as a god. And it's not a coincidence that this movie comes out in Holy Week. Thanks for watching. Bye.